Hi friends, welcome back to another video. I am very excited for this first video in this new little series that I'm starting, all about the units that we are using this year in US history that I have created myself. So first up, we're going to be talking about Vikings and the Age of Exploration. So let's get started. So I decided this year that we would not be using a curriculum for US history, that I was just going to be doing these little units all throughout US history, and I would be pulling great books, we'd do some activities and some crafts, and that was what we were going to do. And we are absolutely loving it. My kids love it. It's really casual. We can dive deeper into the things that we're interested in. We can work at their level. I don't feel kind of like scheduled in with a curriculum. So we are loving it, and I thought that I would make these little unit videos for you guys on what we read and what we did, in case you either are doing units yourself or if you want to supplement in any good readers especially. So that's what this series is going to be. So if you're not already subscribe now so you don't miss anything. I am also going to be making a video. I'm currently just still outlining it so I don't forget anything, about how I actually designed, scheduled, just planned this whole thing out for this year. The steps I took to find the books and the crafts and the activities, deciding how long each unit was going to be, or, approximately how long they were going to be. So that's all going to come soon. I'm still working on it. I have to make sure I get all my steps in, and so I can explain it well so it makes sense to someone who's not in my brain. Okay, so let's start with our first unit, which was Vikings and Age of Exploration. This unit, I scheduled it for about 5 weeks. That's how long it took. We did history about 2 or 3 times a week. And let me tell you exactly what a history time looked like for us before I get into the books that we used. So basically, I would read whatever I was going to read for the day, a few pages of something, part of a book. Like I said, I'll show you exactly what that was in a second. And then we would do a coloring page. My son, Mr. 7, my kindergartner, Miss 5, and myself, I would also do a coloring page. My kids like it when I do the coloring pages with them, and I'm not just sitting there kind of staring at them, watching them work. Now, we are having a conversation during this time as well. Casual conversation about what we just read. This is where I sort of am asking them questions to see if they retained anything that we literally just read a second ago on the couch. So, yes, now I don't have a teacher's manual. I don't have review questions in front of me. How do I sort of navigate that? So basically what I do is just have them tell me something. Try to tell me the whole thing that we read, summarizing it themselves in their own words. Okay, what did we just read? Summarize what we just read. And one of them will get started. The other one will chip in. Sometimes I have to prompt something. Well, what happened next? Or, who did... what was the thinking there? And then we get into, wouldn't that be scary to be traveling the ocean? Can you imagine learning about the stars and using that to navigate your way? They didn't have GPS, so we would have all these different conversations about things. And we were just doing it while we were coloring. So there's no, I'm not staring at them asking a question. This is all casual, and we're just talking. And we've had some great conversations. Yes, we would do the coloring pages, we'd talk, review what we read, and then that was kind of it for history. On the final day of our unit, we did just a project day. It was really fun. And what we did was create a ship out of cardboard boxes. And my kids really got into it. We went on Pinterest. You can just type in cardboard box projects, and a ship, and there was a bunch of different ones. We picked parts of different designs and we created our own ship. We had a crow's nest. One of my kindergartner's stuffed animals ended up in the crow's nest with a toilet paper roll on this dog's nose, so it looked like he was looking through out into sea. And my son designed a ship's wheel out of his connects, and he actually made it so it spun, and then he punched holes in the side of the ship and made this crank to raise and lower the anchor. I mean, they really went into it. They colored on the side of the boxes for the waves and the windows, and we named it, and it was just it was so much fun. I wish I could show you a picture, but you'll never see my kids on this channel, okay? But it was a lot of fun, and that was like a core memory for our homeschool, definitely, for sure. So I'm going to start with our read aloud. We read Pedro's Journal by Pam Conrad. It's about this boy, Pedro, and he is on the ship, one of the ships with Christopher Columbus. I think they're on the Santa Maria. And yeah, the Santa Maria. That's what it says on the back. I couldn't remember which of the three they were on. And the book is written as like journal entries. It's got some pictures sprinkled throughout. And so he is really green. He's never been to sea. He doesn't know anything about sailing. Eventually he does learn some things, certainly. But he can read and write. So Christopher Columbus, he keeps logs for him. And he obviously is writing his own journal because this is all from his perspective. This is historical fiction, and we actually had to have a discussion about that because my kids had never read something that was historical fiction. We've gotten library books, but they're all facts or a read aloud that has nothing to do with anything. So I had to explain that, yes, Christopher Columbus was real. He did have these 3 ships. He went to, the Caribbean and the Bahamas, what is now the Caribbean and the Bahamas. And, but not everything that happened in this book happened exactly in this way. Hints of these things happened. So it was just a good discussion about historical fiction in general. So anyway, so Pedro the whole time also just longs to be back home. He just wants to get home and go to mass with his mom. He talks about that a few times. So just a little bit of a coming of age story as well with him as he kind of learns to be a man, I guess. But this one was a great read. Both of my kids enjoyed this one. So the main book that we read from was The Discovery of the Americas by Betsy Maestro. We have the whole series of this, which we're going to use throughout the year. It's a great picture book. There's words, but not too many words. So I would read 3 or 4 spreads at a time. I didn't exactly have it all planned out every time I read, but I would just sometimes I'd flip the page and I'd say, hang on a second, let me see if we're going to read another page. And I'd look and skim and see if it was about something new, something, that was part of what we were already reading. So, yeah, I didn't exactly have everything planned. We're going to read so many pages this day. Sometimes we winged it. But this started out talking about how what is now Russia and Alaska used to be connected. The land bridge, the ice, it melted eventually. But the people were very nomadic. They followed the animals. Eventually, the big game died out, and we had all these groups of people that eventually settled throughout North and South America. And the ice melted, and that part of the world was forgotten, essentially, from the rest of the world. And we went over a bunch of times, did this world actually disappear? No. Were people always there? Yes. Was this a new world, though, to the rest of the world? Also, yes. So we had a lot of discussion about that. And one of the great tools that we used was our scrunch map. It comes in this little bag. I mean, it's just really, they're great. I love this. We also have a U.S. map as well. So what I did essentially, we would sit on the couch together while we would read, and I would lay this over our laps so we could see what was going on. And I started out having half of it folded over, and I explained this is what they thought the world looked like. And actually they didn't know all that much about Africa either, so I had it all folded up so that they could only see really Europe and Asia. And I said, okay, all these people wanted to get from here to here. And there was a lot of discussion about well, what would you do? They didn't have Google Maps. They didn't even know, what the world essentially looked like we do now. So each new explorer brought new information back. And you know, so what I would have them do was like find where someone would start, trace their finger down, especially like with my kindergartner, so she could see, okay, they started, you know, over here, Spain and Portugal, usually. And, you know, first they started going around Africa, and eventually they said, okay, well, let's try going over the Atlantic. So that's a great tool to use when we were doing all the different explorers. And they do talk about a number of the explorers in here, but it's very brief. You know, so-and-so from Italy or Spain or France, you know, wherever, would sail from here to here. They discovered this. They were the first European person to stand on wherever. So the other one that we kind of paired in with that was this book, Around the World in 100 Years from Henry the Navigator to Magellan. It's by Jean Fritz. This one's quite wordy. It's got chapters. It has, I think it was 12 chapters. So, I'm just going to read the chapters to you. So, before the explorers, Prince Henry the Navigator, Bartholomew Diaz, Christopher Columbus, Vasco da Gama, Cabral, Cabot, Vespucci, Ponce de Leon, Vasco Nunez de Balboa, Magellan, and then the last chapter is after Magellan. So, I started out reading. I would read a chapter each time we did history, so sometimes it was paired up with this, or I would just pause this and read these. I read the first 3 chapters all the way through. I skipped the one on Columbus because we read a separate book on Columbus, and I didn't read the Magellan one or the After Magellan because that was summarized a little briefer in here. I read a lot of the rest of them, but I didn't read every single little bit. I ended up realizing that I was reading a little too much to my kids. They are just in kindergarten and second grade. So I would I'd have this book out and I'd kind of skim it and give them, you know, the Cliff Notes version. Of course, my second grader doesn't really like it when I do that because he's like, why are you skipping all the words? Because he can read enough now and he likes to follow along with what I'm reading. And I'm just like, I'm just summarizing what's going on here. So, there was a little bit of me learning how much we actually should be reading in this unit. So it was like a work in progress. I was trying to figure out exactly how much we should read, and now I've adjusted what we will be doing for our other units this year. Okay, and then the other 2 books that we read that we really enjoyed, and we do have all of these as well that we'll be reading this year, is Leif the Lucky and Columbus. So this was the one that we read instead of reading that chapter on Columbus. These books are great. We read them over the course of a week, so I read them, you know, pretty good chunks of them. Like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, during the weeks that we did them. So it covers more than just like Columbus's expeditions. It goes into his life, how he was as a boy, his interest in sailing and all that stuff. And then, with Leif Erikson, you know, they talked about his father, their journeys to Greenland and Iceland. It also went into some other Viking expeditions into Canada and how they tried to establish a settlement there. It lasted very briefly. They eventually left. So it talks about a little bit more than just him, towards the end at least. But this was a good read. And we had read... we did a read aloud about him last year. The first book in the Imagination Station series, that was very good. It's like a Magic Treehouse, but a Christian version of it, essentially. And I can't remember what the title was. Something about Vikings was in the title. But it's the first one in the Imagination Station series, so I would recommend that as well. But we had read that last year, so we weren't gonna do that again. So that is everything that we did and everything that we read for our Vikings and Age of Exploration unit. I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did, please give me a thumbs up and drop me a comment down below if this really was useful to you. If you'd like to see me do this a little differently as I do the next videos. I know sometimes I can get a little wordy when I'm talking about the books, but I want to make sure that I'm explaining everything and and my brain just goes, you know, kind of a little bit all over the place. So, yes, subscribe if you're new so that you catch all of the upcoming videos with the other units that we're doing this year. And I will see you guys all in the next video real soon. Bye.